recently I came across this book, The Right Choice, Resolving 10 Career Dilemmas for Extraordinary Success, written by none other than Shiv Shivkumar. He says it took him 24 months to write this book. I would say he had been very meticulous in keeping his notes, journals, observations and his career lessons all through the 3 decades of his life experience. If not, it is nearly impossible to condense all of this in less than 300 pages. When you open the book, you are welcomed by Indira Nooyi, who happened to be his boss at Pepsico. Her humility and clarity in thought comes through in that 1-page foreword that she has written. I concur with her. It's good to hear so many women leaders' voices through this book. When they talk to Shiv, their candor is what would surprise you. They've been very open about the struggles, the anxieties that they went through, and it's amazing read. In the introduction section, Shiv talks about how he approached Mr. Ramcharan, the management consultant, widely acclaimed guru for his strategic and business acumen. And he also spoke to Indira Nooyi about this idea. Both of them instantly gave a thumbs up. And they said no one has ever attempted such a book. And I agree with them. This is something is unputdownable in my view. And Shiv goes on to define what a good career is and how one should approach the subject of career. This is very well useful for people who are starting their career, who are about to make a switch from one company to another or one industry to another. In the introduction, Shiv shares 5 lessons that he picked up on his journey. And these are very profound, and I can see the kind of practical wisdom oozing through each of these lessons. First, he talks about sheer craft alone does not ensure career success. He says like a movie release would require a timing, a career also requires that. You need many moving parts to work together to make your career a very successful one. And he defines trust in a very profound manner. He says trust means you will not take advantage of me nor hurt me when I am vulnerable. And Shiv says that a career is built on foundation of working well with people. He says be a thought leader. Start contributing beyond your job role. And that's where your contribution to various other committees and teams, cross-functional groups that you are invited to be a part of, all of these matter a lot, not just your main KRA. And he defines career dilemma as many alternatives may look good. Which one to choose would be a tough decision to take. Okay, let's move on to dilemma 1. Is money the most important variable in a career? In the first section, Shiv goes on to give you statistics from credible sources on what motivates people, why people quit their job, what kind of salaries are there in the market for what kind of role, and what is the role of debt in deciding which job to choose. He also touches upon millennials and Gen Z, what kind of decisions they make. This is where you meet experts from the industry. I found this part really exciting because normally in any book you have that dialogue with the author and you get to know the inside mind of an author, what he or she thinks and so on. However, in this book you have benefit of listening to various industry leaders, credible, authentic leaders who have been there, done that. Their words of wisdom is also part of this book. So that's why I found it very intriguing. And when I picked it up, the first name that hit me was Harish Devarajan. He has been in Hindustan Unilever as a HR head for quite some time, and he's been working across various functions, and he talks about how important money is. And his interview is quite exciting and insightful. You should read the book to get the benefit of these inputs. Then comes Mr. R.R. Nair, who's also ex-HR from Unilever. Currently he is a leadership coach and he is director on various organizations. He's alumni of IIT Kharagpur. And finally, Shiv closes this dilemma by offering 5 things one should remember about this dilemma. The next dilemma is, should I do a second MBA? Applies to people who want to do their first MBA as well. As we saw in the first dilemma section, Shiv approaches this dilemma with lots of data. In India, he says there are about 5,500 B school and nearly 50,000 people graduate every year. A very startling data you will come across in this section. Only 20 B schools in India where starting salary post-placement is higher than the fee the student has paid for the 2-year course. This is very profound. Further, he goes on to offer much more detailed information and data for you to consider the pros and cons of doing an MBA. Now comes the section where you actually get to talk to people who have taken a break from their career, enrolled into that second MBA and took advantage of this investment by growing leaps and bounds in their career. The first one you would meet in this chapter is Kirtiga Reddy. She is a partner in SoftBank Investment. She was the managing director of Facebook, India and South Asia. She is a co-founder of F7 Seed Fund. She also served as a chair for Stanford Business School Management Board. She has been recognized as Fortune India's most powerful women and as Fast Company's most creative people in business. Kirtiga Reddy went on to do her MBA after working for some time in R&D. She opens up about what prompted her to do a MBA and what are the factors in her decision making. Very insightful. Then comes Bhavya Mishra, who is a HR director in Pepsico. She finished her MBA from MDI in 2007. She worked in PepsiCo as a plant HR and then she worked with Bharti. Now she was considering to go for her second MBA. However, she dropped the idea and she tells reasons why she had dropped that idea. And she goes on to list 3 reasons why she dropped that idea. It's a very insightful read. Then as we saw in the first section, here also Shiv talks about 5 things to remember about this dilemma 2. Dilemma 3 talks about living apart, where couples decide in the interest of their career advancement or financial situation or any other viable reason, they decide to stay apart. And there is a term called LAT couples, living apart together couples. In this chapter, you will come across statistics how prevalent it is in various developed countries. The first leader entrepreneur whom you would meet in this chapter is Priyanka Vijay Kumar. She was heading consumer practices in Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail. She did a degree in National University of Singapore, after which she did some technology related roles in Singapore, developing apps and among other things. After moving to India, she did a MBA at IIM Calcutta and then she moved into corporate world. She goes on to talk about reasons behind her husband and herself living in 2 different cities, Delhi and Mumbai, and what did she learn from that experience. And she also reflects whether it was a good decision for her to do in the early stage of her career. Now that they both are living together in Bangalore, if she had another opportunity like this, would she take it? If you want to know the answer, you should read this book. Then comes Vivek Gambhir. Again, Vivek is a Harvard educated. He moved to India after working for 12 years in Bain in US to set up their India operations. After a few years, he joined Godrej. Now his job was in Mumbai, but family is in Delhi. He explains the reasons that prompted him to stay separately from his family and how he would divide his time between the 2 cities and how his company supported him in this decision. What would be the adjustment for his team? What sacrifices he had to make and his family had to make because of such arrangement? It's a very good interview where you can experience the candor of Vivek, and he also talks about childcare and what kind of issues he faced and so on. And the chapter ends by giving 5 specific things to remember. Now let's move to dilemma 4. While working elsewhere, rejoining a previous organization that you had quit. I have been a Boomerang employee too. Again, you would meet Prakash Nedungadi, who is a former group head of consumer insights and brand development at Aditya Birla. He talks about what makes one to join the company. He talks about the culture and various aspects which prompts the employee. He has a very unique experience of having 2 stints in Gillette and 2 stints in ABC. It's worthwhile listening to him. his experience on how he did that. Later, you will also meet Sudhanshu Vats, who is a former CEO of Viacom 18 Media. Sudhanshu has over 3-decade-long career. He has moved from various industries, from FMCG, oil and lubricants to entertainment. Very few people, I think, have done this kind of movement. He left Hindustan Lever and joined Castrol and went back to Hindustan Lever. So that makes him a Boomerang employee. And he talks his experience. He shares his experience on why he did that switch and what factors were considered while making that transition. Then comes Rakesh Kumar. He's a general manager in SC Johnson. He talks about his journey from Pepsico and back and what were the key decision points, how he managed that transition and so on. Again, the chapter ends with 5 specific things that you should remember. Now coming to dilemma 5, should I take a sabbatical? How do we define sabbatical? Is a paid or unpaid extended break from work. And this again talks about why do employees take sabbatical. There are a lot of reasons listed out there. And then he goes on to give you a history of what sabbatical is, how it evolved, and what are the kinds of benefits a sabbatical would give for both the employee and the organization. Now comes Pavitra Singh, the Chief HR Officer of Pepsico India. She started her career in 2001 with American Express and joined PepsiCo in 2006 in the talent acquisition team. Steadily, she's risen up through the ranks, various roles. She took a sabbatical in 2012 and she talks about the reasons that prompted her to do so and how she got back on her job. This is a very interesting interview. You should read this to get a depth of what she's talking about. Then comes Ruchika Gupta, who is a AVP in Marketing Communication, Luminous Power Technologies. She graduated in 1997 from NMIMS with a degree in Advertising and Communication. She started her career with an advertising agency before assuming a role in Nestle, after which she spent 7 years in Nokia. Over the last 20 years, straddled numerous functions including brand transformation. Ruchika took her sabbatical after her stint with Nokia, and she talks about what prompted her and how this sabbatical helped her, what kind of anxieties and insecurities she had to go through, and how did she work around them. It's a very interesting read, and you will get to know that you are not alone in such things. And the chapter ends with 5 things to remember about this dilemma. Again, in usual style, Shiv is being very to the point, brief, and very clear in his communication. The 6th dilemma, switching industries in a career. This is another one where you would get a lot of data, statistics to talk about why such a shift happens. And even when you take Shiv's career, he moved from FMCG to telecom, and how he co-opted few of his friends and advisors to induct him into the new industry. This industry hopping, he gives some data for you to mull over, and it's not a uncommon thing. What really surprised me is when Shiv says he spoke to 200 people before he moved to telecom. That's amazing, what kind of hard work and homework that he has done. The first leader you would meet in this chapter is Piyush Pandey, Chief Creative Officer Worldwide and Executive Chairman for India O&M. He's one of the recognizable names in the Indian advertising. Surprisingly, this is the only instance where you will find a leader who have stayed with one company all his life, and how he did it, right? And he talks about his view on industry hopping. The other leader you would meet in this chapter is Debjani Ghosh, who is the president of NASSCOM. Again, a wonderful career, amazing lady who have risen through ranks and who has got so many accolades, including President of India's First Ladies Program. She's been felicitated by none other than Honorable President of India. Debjani all through worked in technology. After a stint of running Intel, now she is running NASSCOM as a president. And what kind of dilemma she had to face before accepting this role. And she's been very forthright in her comments. She's the first women president of NASSCOM. and what kind of advantages and challenges that she faced with this opportunity. Then comes late Mr. Chandramouli Venkateshwaran, one of my favorites. He has written many books, including Catalyst. He also talks about his perspective and very practical wisdom on this dilemma. Again, you will meet Kirtiga Reddy, whom you met earlier in the previous dilemma. She talks about moving from R&D center of Facebook in Hyderabad to become Facebook's first India CEO. How did that shift happens? What kind of difficulties she faced? What kind of capabilities she had to build to be successful in this new role? Very interesting read, and she talks about her mentor, the kind of advice she received from Sheryl Sandberg. Again, a wonderful and insightful read. Followed by Rohit Kale. He is a MD of Spencer Stuart India. He holds an MBA from IIM Calcutta. He was a project engineer with Thermax earlier. Then slowly made his way after stints. Slowly made his way up. He's been in consulting, banking, HR, and many other roles before his current assignment. He moved from McKinsey to Spencer Stuart. It's a big cross-functional change. How did he do it? So he shares a very interesting anecdote that happened in his life while he was working at McKinsey. He was traveling on weekends to meet his family and be with his daughter, and his executive assistant asked a question which triggered the entire thought process. And that was a very insightful conversation, I believe, which made him take decisions regarding his career. And he also offers a lot of good advice and questions to ponder on. And there are many questions that Rohit answers with absolute candor. Then comes Sonny Iqbal of Egon Zender, again a wonderful human being. He earned his BA with honours from St. Stephen College, Delhi, followed by MBA in University of Surrey, UK, and a postgraduate diploma in hospitality from Oberoi Centre for Learning and Development, Delhi. Then he joined Egon Zender. He worked for Oberoi Group in UK, India and Middle East in operations and marketing and sales. He also managed financial and travel services business in American Express. He has moved from hospitality to credit cards to leadership advisory, and he talks about how difficult or easy was it for him. What kind of decisions he had to face in his life. And he gives his view on what are the situation and circumstances one should switch industry and one should not. Later you will also meet Sudhanshu Vats, former CEO of Viacom 18 Media, for the second time now in the book. After his second stint in HUL, he made a complete pivot, again decided to join entertainment industry. So he talks about his decisions on moving from FMCG to entertainment and to lubricant, all those decision points around his career, what difficulties and challenges that he faced. It's a wonderful read, one should not miss. Finally, the chapter ends with 5 things to remember about this dilemma. Dilemma 7 talks about, should I take up an overseas job? By now, you should be knowing Shiv. He's fond of data, and lots of data you will have to mull over and reflect on in the first section of this chapter. After which, he also gives insights on what are the destination for one to consider if you have to move abroad, and what kind of bias people have on MNC and how to identify those. How it is different working abroad as compared to working in India. This question is answered by Anusha Shetty, the chairperson and group CEO of Grey Group India. She has over 20 years of marketing and advertising experience. She has worked across India, Silicon Valley with agencies such as Lintas, Euro, RSCG on multiple brands including Intel, Titan, Honeywell among others. She also co-founded Autumn Worldwide, a digital marketing firm which later got acquired by Grey Group. Now she is the chairperson and CEO of Grey Group India. She has shuttled between Silicon Valley and India. She sees how culturally these two countries, US of A and India, are different. What factors determined her move back to India? You will also meet another leader, late Chandramouli Venkateshan, in this chapter again. He talks about various differences between the way Indian and multinational companies operate. Is there any significant cultural aspects which are peculiar to MNCs? Mr. Venkateshan has been very, very generous with his observation and comments. Very insightful. I don't think you will get this in any textbooks. Following, you will also meet Vani Dandia, who is the founder of Cherry Peach Plum Consultancy. She's an MBA from MDI. She worked with Henkel, Reckitt Benckiser and Unilever as regional marketing manager. She joined Pepsico as a category director, Indian snacks and food, and she's the person behind Kurkure. Vani went to work in Thailand after a brief role here in India, and she talks about how difficult was it to move from national role to a regional role. And she also talks about how to earn trust while working in a remote location. And she also talks about how she adjusted to the new culture, new place, Thailand, and what kind of insights, learning she got along the way. Wonderful read again. After which you will also meet Kirtiga Reddy again one more time, and she talks about her decision to move back between India and US. What kind of factors contributed that decision in both ways. You will also briefly meet Devjani Ghosh and Piyush Pandey in this chapter. Dilemma 8 talks about should I turn entrepreneur? Again, the usual Shiv style. You will have lots of data to mull over. I was particularly intrigued by this data. 16 million women-owned and controlled enterprises, representing approximately 20% of all enterprises today, that are creating direct employment for about 27 million people in India. They can generate 150 to 170 million jobs by 2030, which is more than 25% of the new jobs required for the entire working age population. This is phenomenal. So it also means that more women entrepreneurs are required in this country. And this is from the gender bias report created by Bain and Google. Okay, you will again meet Anusha Shetty here. She talks about highs and lows of her journey, what kind of mentors helped her and how did she find them. You will again meet Harish Devarajan. He turned entrepreneur after his stint in corporate world, and he talks about what are the insecurities and anxieties one need to face in this new phase of life. Later in this chapter, you will meet Meena Ganesh, who is a serial entrepreneur and CEO, Protea Medical. Meena talks about how she became a serial entrepreneur, what kind of advice she would give for the first time professional entrepreneurs. Later on, you will also meet Sujata Duburi, co-founder and chief product officer. She made gourmet foods. She is someone who had a very unusual career graph. She graduated in international economics from University of Michigan. Then later on, for 12 years, she was a stay-at-home mom. Her passion and obsession to provide nutritious food for her kids led to being an entrepreneur. Very exciting read for you to know how she built this company and what kind of support she got from various sources. Then again we meet Vani. This time she talks about why she took the plunge into entrepreneurship, what factors helped her to be successful. You will also meet Hari Menon, who is a co-founder of Big Basket. He calls himself an accidental entrepreneur. Now let's talk about Dilemma 9, to join or not join a board. As usual, Shiv gives lot of data in the first section of this chapter for you to get a sense of what does this mean to be on a board of a company, what kind of role a board member has, and how to reshape the thinking of an organization through this role. What kind of steps one need to take to build trust at every level when you are a board member. Only 2.2%, that is 11 out of 500 in the Nifty 500 have women on their board, which is really alarming. There's a scope for improvement, and many women leaders out there can consider this opportunity. In this section, you will hear Balaraman, who is the founder of Boardroom Advantage. Balaram finished his MBA from IIM Ahmedabad in 1970 after which he joined Unilever, where he straddled many roles including MD and CEO of Ponds India. Then he became MD and CEO of Adrenaline E-System. He currently serves as a non-executive director on the boards of numerous companies, a veteran, and he has also been a president of Madras Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Madras Management Association, among others. He has been a part of many committees to choose board members, and Balram talks about what does he look for in a board member, what kind of skill sets, and what kind of decision, how does he choose which board to join. Very interesting read. Then we meet Kirtika Reddy again. This time she talks about the 5 different boards that she is part of, how she is choosing a board role, and what factors she considers in picking one. Followed by M. Damodaran, who is a chairperson, Excellence Enablers, and former chairman of SEBI, UTI and IDBI. He is the most sought after independent director in India. He's been on the board of various blue chip companies such as L&T, Hero MotoCorp, Tech Mahindra, CRISIL, and so on. He shares his wisdom on how he evaluates a board role and what are the variables that he considers before saying yes. You will also meet Rama Bijapurkar. She's an independent director and thought leader. You might have read many of her articles in many of the journals, popular journals. She works across all sectors, organizations. She has served as an independent director on the boards of several India's blue chip companies, including Axis Bank, Bharat Petroleum, CRISIL, Godrej Consumer Products, Infosys, ICICI Prudential Life Insurance, and so on. Again, she shares her wisdom on how to choose a board role, what parameters she considers before saying yes or no to be part of a board, what makes an effective board member. These are very insightful interviews one should not miss. We again meet Debjani Ghosh. Again, she's on many boards and what factors she considers. Finally, we come to dilemma 10. Well, in this last chapter, Shiv talks to around 20 leaders somewhere in the month of August 2020, and he asks them, what is your biggest dilemma? Some of them are ex-CEOs, some of them are still in that role, and when you read each of these, you get a perspective of the industry they come from, their thought process, and the struggles they are working on. So it's a wide range of dilemma, right? So it has to be taken in the context of which industry and what kind of competition they are facing, what kind of stage of growth the company is in, and so on. Then he goes on to talk about his first 90 days in the role of CEO, what all happened and what kind of surprises he faced. Who this book is for. It could be for a management trainee or a managing director or a CEO of a company. Anyone in any industry could benefit from this book. It's a wonderful read. You don't have to read from cover to cover, and each chapter would take somewhere between 30 minutes to 1 hour depending on the length of the chapter. Directly focus on the dilemma that you are struggling with currently. You may get an idea or two by reading this book. I strongly recommend this to all my clients. It's a wonderful read, and there's someone who have compiled all of this in one single book for the benefit of the masses, and that's where my salute goes to Shiv, and I'm sure he would have many more such contributions to make to our society through his speaking engagements and writing assignments. So more power to you, Shiv. Until we meet again, thank you everyone for staying this long. It's a long post of mine compared to other small videos that I have posted so far. This is not a sponsored video. I'm doing it out of my own passion. My intent of posting this is to support people around me. My intent of doing this video is to share this excitement that I found an easy to read book about various dilemmas one could find himself or herself in. It's a good compendium. It's a must for every library. And I'm sure you would enjoy reading this book as much as I enjoyed reading this. I would come with more such book reviews in the near future. Until we meet again, for subscribing to this channel. I would leave all the links in the description below. Thank you.